Out of this world burrito here, and today we're looking at an 8 loot box run. This is where we run 8 heroics back to back so we can get their loot boxes as fast as possible, which are items that were recently added to SWG Legends. I'll be covering the strategy and reasoning behind these runs from a commando's perspective, so most DPS can follow along without issue. I will not be covering every single mechanic in the original 5 heroics, as this guide assumes you have a general understanding of how those work, at least for your role. However, I will be going into all the mechanics for the Jedi theme park heroics since those are a bit newer. However, I will not be talking about the light side version of the Fate of Mellichae as we do dark side version for these runs. You can see that as my command I run immediately over to Watto's because I will be reverse clearing with the spy who will be joining me shortly. And from here, from Watto's, we'll go from Combat Hall down to Cloner to meet up with the rest of the group, who's actually going to be starting at University as our Jedi is going to run over to Starport and immediately clear that on her own. Now, if you want to see how that's done, I will put a guide down in the description so you can see how a light side Jedi clears that alone. While I'm clearing Watto's, let's talk about our group composition here. This is pretty much the perfect group comp you could get. We have 1 Jedi, 3 Commandos, 2 Officers, 1 Medic, and 1 Spy. You can get a bit more ideal here if you were to switch one of the Officers for a Melee Smuggler to increase single target and sustain damage. But this is pretty good, especially we just needed to fill an 8th as fast as possible, and we had an Officer, so why not just toss him on in? Now, when getting buff for this run, you want to buff for kinetic and elemental armor protections. You do not need to get energy. This is because most of the dangerous things in this run will be using kinetic and elemental damages. You might take a little bit more damage during IG-88 and Lost Star Destroyer for some of the instances by not having that energy protection. If you really want to go triple armors in your Entertainer buff, you can, but at least get kinetic and elemental, as the most dangerous instances are the Jedi theme park ones, and they primarily do kinetic and elemental. As we clear Combat Hall here, we can talk about the order of the instances. First, we start in Tuskan Army like normal. Then we will go to Axkva Min. Then IG-88. From there, we're going to go to Exar. And then finally end the first set of 5 with Lost Star Destroyer. The reason we end with Lost Star Destroyer is that we want the forced entry or smuggled buff you get from doing that instance for Kizash, Sinya, and Fate of Mellichae, since those are much more difficult instances, and we want to be able to push those instances as fast as possible, and that's where that buff will help the most. For clearing Cloner, it'd be best if the spy runs over to the boss room, starts fighting the boss immediately as the commander runs downstairs and either clears that room in Cloner, or tries to pull them back here quickly. My spy went down this ramp, so I just went this way. Just basically split this and cleared as fast as possible. Spies will take out these raid leaders a bit faster than commandos will, and on the flip side, commandos will take out larger groups a little bit faster than the spy will. We are done rescuing the buildings, and now we have to clear the streets and get ready for sending. This phase proceeds as normal. If you need something to do to pass the time, you can always drive around the city and kill the patrolling Tuskens for extra loot and credits, which on Legends, those credits payouts were increased for NPCs in these heroics, so it's always a good thing to do. And you know, get some rare junk loot or some Isomery Senzymes that are worth keeping from these Massifs and Manthas, but otherwise there's nothing different here. If anyone was running late and needs to go to the bathroom, Tuskan Army is the place to do it. The medic sends as per normal, and everyone else just keeps an eye on whatever positions they were assigned by the group lead. When fighting Tuskens in Tuskan Army and responding to calls, it's best to try and group them up for AoE, especially if you're a commando or officer even. So you'll see here, I quickly aggro them, then start running them back towards the rest of the spawn. This is because I'm trying to group them up. However, like half the group's here, so they all die before I have to worry about it. But if you're ever like responding to something alone, or your damage is a little bit lower, or just fewer people show up, it's always best to group up Tuskens when able to. Here you can see that group up strategy and a little bit better effect until my party rolls up and clears them all out by sneezing on them anyways. It being time for Tusken King himself, you'll see me here swapping out my cold heavy weapon for the Frag Storm, which is a kinetic elemental type. Ideally for a group of 3 commandos, you should be using the GLX Fire Lance for heat, the CR1, CR2, or Tabana's Tapper's Cannon for cold, and either the Frag Storm for kinetic or a heavy particle beam cannon for energy. The heat dot won't override the cold debuff. However, the acids proccing effect for crit chance and the electricity proccing for trivial chance will. And so we want to maintain that here. So that's why I'm switching over to shotgun to add kinetic. That way you have the best diversity. If we had a 4th commando, then they would be ideally running the energy or kinetic, whatever is opposite of mine. If you're a group with 5 commandos, then sure, you could run Acid. 6? Wow, you got all 6 dots in a run. It's definitely happened before, but in that short period of time, yeah, Tuskan King's already dead and people are starting to pop up in their boxes. I saved mine for the end, so it doesn't matter. It's whatever you feel like. But next, we're going to go over to Axkva Min. Here we're running down to Axkva Min, and as a public service announcement, please do not shoot or heal on the way down. Just run past them. If you're a medic, stave off that temptation to back to bomb your ally or throw a hots up. You're just going to have all the enemies jump on you instead. Just run down. If you have a sprint stint, pop it, run down. If you don't, try and run down with the officers so you can benefit from their scatter and charge if you don't have a movement speed increasing effect of your own. If your group for some reason is very wary of this place, which in a 8 looks box run you shouldn't be, you can group up and run down together, I suppose. For Nandina and Gorvo, your group should be slamming out damage, so just stack them and burn them as fast as possible. The medic can be throwing back to Corruption up on Gorvo to reduce incoming healing from Nandina, and that's what I would recommend, and that's what our medic did here. You could see, though, that in this run, they dropped combat for some reason. Not entirely sure, Spy and Decoy, but it's alright. They go down pretty quickly. For Mellichae, you'll want to use your offensive cooldowns here to try and burn her before she can cloak to save some time. Smugglers, entertainers, and pets with the kick ability can delay her cloak by stunning her, which I recommend doing a few seconds after she's already started, so you get her vulnerable for as long as possible. I think a Spy's flashbang may also work, but I'm not sure. For Kamaru, just don't stand in fire or lightning. Fire is dropped on nearby players that have high hate on her table, so typically the tank. Lightning balls prioritize targets who expend the most action, so smugglers, bounty hunters, and etc. are usually prioritized by those fireballs. Here I just stand and tank it because, just trying to make a point, but I moved out, don't worry. I know not to stand in bad. For Swing Chalo, just have everybody stack on the boss and attack. The commandos will switch to other elements to kill ads when necessary, but in this group composition, you'll have so much AoE that the ads won't really be too much of an issue, and you're already covering half the elements with 2 of the commandos anyways, so it was really just me who had to swap elements to cover electricity and acid vulnerabilities. For Axkva Min, we spread out for the range damage dealers, and then melee will just stay within melee range with the tank. Break crystals like normal. If you have a lot of pets in the group, you might want to recall your pets when you see the debuff icon show up for the AoE that's about to fire. It looks like a red sphere on the pets icon. But yeah, just burn her otherwise. When entering IG-88, the player just needs to not be taking damage from the droids while entering, so commonly our Jedi will run up and grab the hate of the droids just to buy time, because the Jedi, once they pop block and reflect, she's basically unhittable, so she could channel as long as she doesn't get hit by them. If you're a medic running up, you could stasis yourself, then click the button to get in. Typically, I just ride my mount across the wall, then drop in front of the button. You could also drive behind the wall, then clip back through the wall by mounting and dismounting to get back to the other side to click the button. It's whatever. Now that we're inside, though, we're going to be using all the typical strategies you would see in IG-88, so you're going to have all the members tank the bomb droids out the 4 doors. You'll notice that not all of our group members are inside yet. That's because some players will have ITVs to get here, some will use travel hubs. If you get here early at IG-88, as long as you have 4 people to see at the doors, it's pretty safe to start it, even if your medic's not here. But you just keep it rolling, you know? Once the droidicas spawn, those at the doors should pull them towards the middle by running to the opposite corner. I was having a hard time here, obviously. But we got them still all stacked up pretty well here. We just do that to AoE them down a little bit faster. For the flamethrower, battle droids just have all of the groups start on one of the 2 droids, either the right or the left. Do not use stasis. That way the second battle droid can still take damage from area effects and multiple target abilities like Killing Spree. Stasising will make this go slower. And honestly, with a group's damage this high, you don't even need to run away from the flamethrowers. While we destroy IG-88 here, this is a good time to remind medics they should be using Serotonin Boost on smugglers in their group if they don't have anything better to use it on. Specifically to remove the Lucky Break debuff off of the smuggler. It allows the smuggler to proc Lucky Break more often, which is a 100% chance to crit buff, which means that's a lot of damage. So Serotonin Boost is actually adding DPS in that case. But next we're going to go and head to Exar. The first boss of Exar, the Open Hand of Hate, we are going to be activating all of our offensive and defensive cooldowns and just going all out on the boss immediately. The spy should open with ambush to apply the heal reduction to the boss. Once that ambush falls off, medics should then start applying back to corruption and reapply it when they're able to. This is because the cultist NPCs will heal him, so we want to reduce that healing as much as possible. Bounty hunters can also help if they have Dread Strike, if you have a bounty hunter in the group and they have that ability. Otherwise, the medic should also be prioritizing healing the tank, so in this case, the light side Jedi. The boss will death blow and then run wild and basically ruin the entire instance. Everyone else is basically just going to get incapacitated for the most part, either by lightning or the reflect damage. So you can kind of let everyone else go if you have to. As you can see here, having a ton of damage could actually backfire. So if you have to pick between a defensive or offensive cooldown, if they share the same category, pick defensive, but still pop whatever offensive cooldowns you have. Obviously here I used Legendary Warrior, the Colonel Rank, GCW buff, and the Layer Crystal. And that's the boss defeated. Reminder of weak wills is stack and kill the 3 bosses. If you can kill them within a short time of one another, they won't spawn their adds, and you'll just be able to move on to the next phase without having to worry about any of their children trying to get revenge on you. For Caretakers of the Lost, all of the group should stack on the boss. They should kill Calming, Tomb, and Pain when they spawn in, so those 3 adds that like to spawn from one of the 2 doorways. And we want to ignore the Executioner. Actually doing the Executioner mechanic is too slow, so we skip it. Commandos should be saving their kill meter points for Killing Spree. That's going to be the largest damage add here for them. If you have extra kill meter points, you can throw out Cluster Bomb, but you want to save them for Killing Spree most of the time. Commandos should also drop their GCW banners to get Aura of Destruction, as the boss will take more damage from multiple hits. That's why Spy is so helpful here with Assassin's Mark, and Smugglers are really, really good here as well. For Commandos, you want to switch from your 1400 DPS weapon, so if you're using a Fire Lance, a CR-1-2, or the Tabanis Tappers, to a 1360 DPS weapon. This is because the higher elemental damage of those 1360 DPS weapons will do more damage over the course of this fight than your 1400 DPS weapons will do. Electricity does not do more damage during this fight, but there are cases where maybe your electricity weapon will do the most damage, such as, again, Commandos elements at the 1360 ranking. Electricity doesn't have a 1400, so those all should do well. And the Guardian Light and Cannon for bounty hunters. For the Tomb Guardians after Caretaker, just group all 6 of them up and destroy them as fast as possible. You can pull them over to the bridge, the other side of the bridge, whatever. Nothing different for Clenched Fist of Hate. If you get set on fire, make sure to walk, either by using your toggle key or turning it off in settings. Medics, make sure to purge the Reckless Calamity looking debuff, so the dude bent over with the red background off players when it appears, as when they have that debuff, if they fire action, then they will take damage as well. So you don't want your players shying away from using action, because that means more damage. For Lingering, Vengeance, Wrath, and Embrace, we're having 1 Commando start on Wrath to primarily switch on elemental weapons. They're also the ones who will initiate the fight. 1 melee and 1 Jedi, so our tank will be starting on the ping pong, and then everyone else will start on Vengeance. Jedis wearing the Guardian set should remember to not use Sweep 8, Guardian Strike, and no Jedi should be using Enrage during the ping pong. But once Vengeance is defeated, the Commandos can move over to Wrath and backup weapon switch to help Wrath get burned a little bit faster. All of the other DPS should be helping out on the ping pong by either taking out a melee weapon if they're not melee already and getting there and swinging. Medics can go in and help too if they feel like they have the bandwidth to do so. If you're using pets to attack the ping pongs, make sure to have your pets switch with each switch as well. That way they don't get too much hate on one of the 2 ping pongs. And lastly, make sure your pet's not using Provoke. Bounty hunters, don't use anything. Don't use your nets. Don't use aggression. So don't use any of your thing like hate gainers on the ping pongs either. Once Wrath is defeated, you'll have the Word Bearer come down and just have whoever has hate pull them around the bottom. Watch out for Florioes. Everyone else gets up on the staircase, but honestly, I'm almost done talking and he's almost dead, so this phase doesn't last long. For Exar, you're just going to stack Exar and the sword and just burn him. Before leaving Exar, make sure your group agrees on a starport to meet up to get in 1 POB and fly to Lost Star Destroyer. If you have a Smuggler Ace Pilot, make sure they fly so you can get the better Smuggle debuff. In this case, we didn't, so I just flew everybody in a YT-2400. When leaving the Temple of Exar, you can definitely save a bit of time by avoiding any enemies while transporting out. everyone here drove out, dropped an ITV to get to the mining outpost on Yavin. Some players encountered enemies when trying to drop an ITV, so just use your overhead map or mini map to avoid those. That way, group members aren't waiting for you to show up. You can also use GPP or group pickup point to get people to whatever the meeting point of interest is faster as well. When you're in space as the pilot, immediately start your hyperspace route, hop over to your operation station and run your overrides during this routine. You'll also want to shunt your shields back up once your weapon capacitor is overloaded and fully charged, just so you have a little bit of protection while flying out to the Star Destroyer. When you start flying over towards the Lost Star Destroyer, you want to target the Blackguard Hangar Bay immediately. That way you can comment when you get close. There is a macro for boarding the Star Destroyer quickly. I believe that's pinned in the Legends Discord, but I can also put it down below in the description or comments. Flying through the donut is a time loss. We don't fly through the donut here. We're just going to pass right by it. If your vessel gets into some heat at this point, just pop boosters and you can easily outrun these ships. If for whatever reason you're having some really bad luck here with the paths these enemies are taking, you're flying some junker and can't outrun them, any group member that is an ace pilot that has the IFF ability can just do /IFF and fire it, even if they're just standing in your POB, and so they don't even have to be proficient. They just have to have the ability, which rebels and neutral aces get IFF. So we're just going to fly up to the top. I'm not going to fly under because we're going to be within range of the hangar anyways, and I'm just going to use my macro to enter, and we're all smuggled in. Nothing different about the Crick strategy here. The only thing that might be slightly different is that we space our DPS out a bit. So instead of everyone starting on the left side and going clockwise, we have a commando starting in the middle, another commando starting over the right side, and then our last commando starting the left side with the rest of the DPS, and they'll go clockwise while the commandos start dealing damage on the middle and other ends. This is to get armor breaks and more dots put up so that we can kill the ones towards the end of life faster, and there's less time just moving from enemy to enemy, and we can clear them a bit quicker. You still want to be dodging grenades during the sequence, and you're going to be aware of your positioning so that you don't run grenades over other allies while doing this. But you can see we clear these grenadiers very fast, and we can all switch over to Cricks almost immediately there, and then just watch out for fire on the floor from Cricks. Once Cricks is defeated, you're going to want to leave 2 players behind in the hangar. The other 6 group members should go head into the hallway like normal. In this case, we left our light side Jedi and me, one of the commandos. Common pairing is usually leaving a spy and a commando, a smuggler commando, some sort of commando plus one other. Basically, the reason we do this is that we don't have to pet pull the Dark Troopers or leader when they spawn from one of the 2 hangar doors. While pet pulling is convenient, the amount of time lost moving the enemy from the hangar to the hallway and the rest of the group is just slower than just leaving 2 players behind to deal with it there. So here I saw the Storm leader captain spawn in the hallway using the overhead map, so I knew we didn't need to be there anymore. And you've probably already noticed, but I unequip my heavy weapon when I have to run for long distances. Heavy weapons, ranged weapons in general impose a movement penalty, so unequipping those weapons before moving from place to place actually does make you move faster. Melee weapons and, of course, just being unarmed don't impose that disadvantage. But after 3 rounds of Blackguard Troopers, the leader will spawn, the group will commonly call it when there's a leader, and you're just going to want to continue down the hallway down to the end of this hall, and you're going to want to fire upon the 2 Blackguards that spawn within your sight here, so the one at that laser fence on the far side and the one in the hallway. And if you have a Beastmaster in the group, they can pet pull the one on the southern hallway. If you don't have a Beastmaster, somebody can peek out, shoot it, and then run back, and then the 3rd Dark Trooper will just come and run over. Once you're done defeating those Dark Troopers, you're going to continue down the hallway and skip the optional boss that Legends added. While you are skipping loot, you are saving time, so we are going to be skipping that boss. For Watch Captain Pratt, the group will run down to the end of the hallway, shooting the Grenadiers as they run to try and kill as many as possible. Anything that's not dead by the time you get down to the end of the hallway, you are going to stack up against the far wall, and you are going to deal as much damage as possible to everything and just AoE it down. Medics should be keeping an eye on Watch Captain Pratt, as they can Serotonin Purge off superior firepower when he activates it, saves a little bit of damage from going out. Otherwise, you can remove the disease dot that gets applied on our allies. Not a huge deal here because we had 2 officers, but, you know, if you're bored, you got Cure Affliction up, why not? For the Black Sun border hallway, the group will be running to the large room about halfway down the hallway, aka the large donut room. And we are going to be stacking and killing the Black Sun as fast as possible. Having 3 Beastmasters allows us to pet pull the Black Sun borders that spawn behind us and some that spawn in front of us. I highly recommend popping offensive cooldowns and defensive cooldowns if you have them. Make sure that if you have hate on any of the borders, that you point the borders towards walls and away from your group. That way their cone of effect abilities doesn't hit everybody else. Most importantly is the heal cut. That makes everyone's life a little bit harder. If you have 2 officers like we did in this case, I highly recommend them dropping either a staggered offensive rally point, or you can do 1 rally point for offense and 1 rally point for defense at the same time. Just depends on how the group's feeling. The group here was quite durable, and we had really high damage, so we had no problem just staggering offensive rally point and just keep charge up 24/7 instead of scatter. For the Black Sun borders in the engine room, somebody's going to have to run down and get them. They are difficult to target for Beastmasters since you can't really click on them in the overhead map, and since their names start with the letter A, you can't just / target them easily. Just know that when you defeat the Black Sun borders that are on the lower part of the ramp, that will cause Chief Olin to start moving. So you might not want to defeat those immediately. However, you could do a fast strat where you kill those as fast as possible. Then you just have to protect Olim from the borders. And that could save you a bit of time, but it's quite risky. So we opted to not do that. Kill Commander Kenkirk. When you head up the elevator to fight Grand Admiral Sate, you're going to run to the first room where there's 2 NPCs inside of it. Then we're going to have a Beastmaster pet pull Sate to this location. The reason being is that when Sate uses an AoE ability, the other 2 NPCs are going to become aggressive towards him and help us in this fight. It's not a lot of DPS, but it's more than 0, so that means it's going faster. The Beastmaster doing the pet pull can pet pull Sate immediately coming up the elevator. They don't have to wait until they get in this room. If there's no pet present in the group, you can just run to the bridge and kill him like normal. And with that, we're going to move on to Fate of Mellichae, the first of the Jedi theme park instances. So as I stated at the start of the video, here I'm going to be going into more detail for each of the mechanics of every fight, as the Jedi theme park heroics are still somewhat unfamiliar to some people, especially the more optimized strategies, as there are groups who still do these in different ways. This is just the fastest way that this group has found to do these particular heroics. If your group does it another way, then keep doing it that way with your group. If you want to try this way, then go ahead. The first one, though, again, will be Fate of Mellichae, the dark side version, so I'll be fighting Old Man. In this case, I'm going to be updating my assist macro to the DPS in the group, who's going to be responsible for calling out the names of the vulnerable NPCs during the first phase. Setting the assist macro just helps me not have to worry about finding and reading names, because if they're already targeting it, I can just use the assist macro and target the exact thing that I'm supposed to shoot immediately. For safety, the group should run down to the Fate of Mellichae entrance together, even if the way's looking clear. This is because enemies might spawn on top of players while they're running down, which has happened to groups that I have been in. Otherwise, if your group wants to blitz it down, you can. I don't recommend it, though. It just causes more headaches, and also these NPCs still drop okay loot. If enemies start spawning behind you, like what happened exactly right here, just keep running down the ramp and have your group shoot them as you run down. Throughout this instance, the boss, in this case Old Man, will be using Saber Reflect. The group should be calling out Saber Reflect when the system message appears for it. Medics will need to purge the Saber Reflect debuff from the boss once they see it appear. It doesn't always appear immediately after the message. There might be a delay of a few moments. Sometimes it appears very quickly. Players will need to hold back on any single target damaging attacks. Commandos with Killing Spree active need to stop firing completely when Saber Reflect's up, because if their Killing Spree hits the boss, it will kill them. Light side Jedis will need to right-click Saber Reflect buff off of their bar if they have Saber Reflect active. Reflects and riposts can be reflected by the boss, and in some cases kill the Jedi. If the boss is invulnerable, like during this first phase where the NPCs make him invulnerable, even if Saber Reflect is up, you can't kill yourself off of it because you're not doing any damage to him. So we're going to be stacking the NPCs here at the entrance by starting the fight with a pet pull on the boss. Now, any of the NPCs that are active will immediately come over that we can start pulling them. So here we have 2 NPCs, and the mechanic here is that one of them will have their barriers lowered. When the barrier is lower, they'll become vulnerable to damage. The reason we want to stack them up is because while those barriers are up, commandos can still stack things such as armor break and dots, so once those barriers come down, we'll be doing as much damage as possible. The medic here should be holding back on their heals a little bit, so maybe not using heal over times as aggressively, and maybe sticking it back to amples, because there's a high probability that either the boss or the NPCs who are more vulnerable will go over to them. Jedis using the Guardian set can easily keep attention on all of these NPCs with Sweep 8, though, so it won't be too much of a problem. Our Jedi here is using the Duelist set for all of these heroics to increase their damage output, but obviously it makes tanking this part a little bit more difficult without Sweep 8. Again, one player should be in charge of calling out the vulnerable NPC's name when their barrier is down. I highly recommend all the other damage dealers just making an assist macro to that player. If you can, it's very easy. It's just /assist and the player's name. And that makes it a little bit faster to hop on the NPCs rather than trying to find them in this mess. Once all of the barriered NPCs are defeated, the group should run to the main platform. The light side Jedi will bring the boss to the center of the platform. Melee DPS can follow, while all of the ranged DPS and the medics should space out evenly among the outside of the platform. You should put at least 30 meters between you and your closest group members. For safety, I still recommend that melee DPS move out of the center once the phase change happens. That is because if 2 players get these large red circles on them, it could instantly kill them, and we don't want the tank to instantly die here. So you saw the spy run out, that's what they're doing. When a red circle appears on you, just take the hit. Immediately afterwards, a blue circle will spawn on you as well. That will give you a buff for a short period of time that increases all incoming healing. So to stay still, take the hit, wait a moment for that buff to appear from that blue pool, then heal. Once the phase is changed, everyone should start running around. This is because we are looking for Force Glitter Dust that appears around the room. This glitter dust will give us a special buff that will help us kill the boss faster and, more importantly, not die. Everybody, including the medic, will need this buff. For the remainder of this phase, the Jedi is going to be trying to tank the boss in the middle. However, they will need to move around to maintain their buff. There are 2 indicators to know when the boss is about to change their phase. The first one is his health pool. At certain health thresholds, you can anticipate the boss changing from one phase to the next. The clear indication is that the boss will say a specific line in spatial chat. This is why you may see the light side Jedi here reacting to phase changes, it seems preemptively, before the mechanic makes itself known. That's because she is keeping an eye on his max HP, as well as looking out for those chat lines. For this next phase, we call this Force Spirits. We're all going to run and group up in the same blue circle, and 2 Force Spirits will appear that look like the old man. You want to destroy those Force Spirits as fast as possible. When those Force Spirits are defeated, you can switch back to focusing all of your attention on the old man. The 5th phase is Force Relics. The Jedi will move the boss back to the middle of the room. The Jedi melee DPS will stay on the boss for the duration of this phase, while the ranged DPS focus on destroying Force Relics that appear around the room. If the relics aren't destroyed quickly, they will heal the old man. If relics drop on the old man's head, it will deal some damage, but moving the old man around is pretty disruptive to melee DPS, so it's better just to leave him standing still so they can get their full rotations off. For the last phase, everyone will want to group up in the middle to retire the old man. At the beginning of the phase, Elder Jedi will spawn, and you just want to destroy them as fast as possible. Once Mellichae appears and makes the old man vulnerable, you want to activate offensive cooldowns and throw all the damage at him you can. So don't open up on the old man immediately here. Wait until he's vulnerable before using any of your hard-hitting, long cooldown abilities like Superior Firepower. If a second wave of Elder Jedi spawn, just ignore them and kill the old man. They'll despawn once he's dead. With the old man defeated, this group will go do the Sith Altar, which we'll cover very briefly here. However, the Sith Altar is optional. If your group doesn't have the crafting materials or just doesn't want to spend some time here, they could exit and go start Kizash immediately. Now you'll see the Jedi here force runs ahead to get to the southern end of the room to start the altar fight as soon as possible to save a little bit of time. The group here should stack, so all three Sith Juggernauts are on top of one another. The primary Juggernaut to focus is whichever one has the paint target debuff from an officer. That will be the largest damage contribution towards the Juggernaut. It even does more than matching elements. On the topic of matching elements, the Commandos should not be switching elements to match the Juggernauts. That way they can still stack 3 different dots. You'll do much more damage with the Commandos on 3 separate elements than if all the Commandos jump onto, say, electricity. The other DPS are welcome to switch their weapons to match the buff bar icon of the Juggernaut to do a little bit more damage, but again, just match whichever one has paint target and wail away. After the 4th wave of Sith Juggernauts are defeated, the Jedi can meditate to obtain their reward from the altar, and then everyone can use the command /eject to get back to the entrance of the Dark Jedi Temple Cave. Alright, next is Kizash. You want to start this instance by running in and pulling all of the Sith Ritualists and the Master to the center, and group them up to AoE them down faster. The first phase of the boss is I'm going to refer to as Elemental Tanking. The light side Jedi and any melee DPS in the group, or anyone who could switch to melee like officers, should be focusing on the boss and swapping their weapons to match the elemental buff on the boss's icon bar. Therefore, if it's electricity, they should be using an electricity melee weapon. If it's acid, they switch to an acid one. One of the players on the boss, either the light side Jedi or the melee DPS, should be calling out what these elements are in voice chat to help out. The medic should be purging Kizash of Dampen Pain and boosting Shaken off of players when able. This will reduce outgoing damage from removing Shaken, and will also increase incoming damage by removing Dampen Pain as fast as possible. The Commandos and any ranged DPS that can't help with melee should be focusing on killing the stone golems. Stacking the stone golems near Kizash is ideal so the Commandos can maintain dots and armor shredder on the boss. Anything helps to make this phase goes a little bit faster. All players should be watching their feet for red circles and avoiding them. They do a lot of damage. Phase 2 are the elemental golems. This phase will start with the group going to the west side of the platform and engaging the heat golem if they are a ranged damage dealer. If they are melee or can help with melee, they should be attacking electricity to start with. The light side Jedi should stack electricity golem on top of the heat golem to again get armor shredder and dots from the Commandos on both of the active golems. Ranged DPS should all be on the heat golem once again using a heat weapon. All the Commandos will want to use heat for the heat golem, but go back to their primary weapon for the remaining golems as the dot diversity will do more damage than matching the element of the golems who are only weak to melee. So again, for this one, all the Commandos take out a heat weapon for the heat golem, and then once it's only melee golems, to switch back to whatever your primary weapon was to diversify those dots. Medics will need to continue purging Dampen Pain from the golems and boost Shaken off the players. Players fighting the golems can call out when they need a purge on whichever golem to say purge electricity, purge heat, etc. to help the medic out. Once the heat golem is dead, the light side Jedi should move the electricity golem to the front of the entry ramp. Do not go up the ramp or pull the boss up the ramp. This could cause the instance to reset, as bosses will not follow you up the ramp. Once the electricity golem is dead, the cold golem will activate. This is just the same as electricity, just damage it. It is again only weak to melee weapons with the cold element, so Commandos stay on your primary elements to stack those dots. If you have a melee weapon, please switch to it, especially if you can match that element. Once cold is dead, the acid golem will become active. Players will need to defeat it again while avoiding red circles on the floor though this time, so watch out for floor AoEs. And of course again, element acid is only weak towards melee, so use a melee weapon with an acid element here. Phase 3, Kizash will appear in the middle, and we call this phase Big Circles. The group should group up on the outer ring of the center arena, so don't stand on the middle platform. And you'll need to watch for these large red circles that appear on the outside. Just move in the same direction once they appear. Officers should maintain scatter and charge, so that there's some movement speed increase there. And everybody should be on a ranged weapon, including Jedi and melee DPS. This is because it's very common for AoEs to overlap in the middle or stack up with some of the smaller AoEs as well, since those are still appearing during this phase, and just to hit you for a bunch of damage. And also the boss is only vulnerable to range, so there's no real reason to smack him. But once you push it far enough, these artifacts will spawn on the west and east sides of the chamber. Everyone is going to want to focus damaging those artifacts, while the light side Jedi will tank the NPCs that spawn near the group. That way the NPCs are killed by area of effect abilities. Once one artifact is destroyed, the group will want to run to the opposite side of the arena to destroy the second one. Once the second artifact is destroyed, the group should go back on fighting Kizash himself, who will now unroot from the middle of the platform and chase whoever he has threat on, which should be the tank. The medic will continue to purge Dampen Pain as it appears on the boss, and the light side Jedi will want to tank Kizash again in front of the entry ramp. Watch out for AoEs on the floor for the rest of the instance, as those red circles will continue to appear. This next phase is called the Healing Ritualist phase. When the Stone Golems and Salt Minox appear, kill them as fast as possible. When you start seeing blue circles appear, you're going to have one player stand at least one circle. Sometimes the circles will overlap, so you can get a few counting. When circles appear in the middle, only professions with strong defensive cooldown should go in here. So in this case, I ran in, popped Stand Fast, and just tanked. This is because AoEs appear in the middle very commonly, and they're hard to see. Once all the circles are occupied, the Ritualists will become vulnerable, either one or both. You'll want to damage them down as quickly as possible. Medics at the start of this phase, make sure to purge the green buff icon on the Ritualist. It looks like a green heart. Purge that off as fast as possible as well, as that will help with the group's survivability. Once both Ritualists are dead, you can move back to the boss. If this phase took a little bit longer and you got a second set of Golems or Minox, you'll want to make sure to pull them off of the medic if they attack the medic, and pull them over to light side Jedi. That way the light side Jedi can pick them up as soon as possible. Now, during the last phase and this finals phase, the light side Jedi will want to move around to avoid AoEs on the floor. This last phase is just killing Kizash. You just burn him down as much as possible. Again, if NPCs spawn, just bring them over to the Jedi, pull them off, and AoE them down. We're going to start the 8th and final instance Sinya the same way as we started Kizash, is grab the Ritualists, move them over to the Sith Shadow Master, AoE them down, and then defeat the Sith Shadow Master. Now for Sinya, you're going to be wanting to watch out for Saber Reflex once again. However, you can set up a target macro as a medic to help target Sinya a little bit sooner, so it's less difficult switching over to her. That doesn't work for an old man because his name starts with AN. However, if you're doing light side Fated Mellichae and fighting Mellichae, you can do a target macro for Mellichae. So here, we're just going to stand in the middle and kill Sinya. There are blue pools that spawn around the arena that you can drag her into, but you kill her so fast, it really isn't necessary. For phase 2, just stand in the middle and kill Sinya once again. There are NPCs spawning on the outside of the arena that are walking towards the middle, but once you push her to the next phase, they'll just despawn. Medic should be purging Saber Block off of Sinya as well. That way the group can do more damage to her faster. Once Sinya is defeated, the entire group should move over to the east side of the arena, or west side, whichever one's your favorite, while the light side Jedi will remain in the middle. The light side Jedi is going to start this instance by attacking Sinya and running her around the central platform. This is to avoid electricity AoEs that will be targeted on the Jedi. It is important that the rest of the group do not attack Sinya here, because the person who receives the electricity AoEs is based, I think, on her hate table. So we don't start attacking her here because we don't want to have to avoid the electricity balls. With the artifacts now spawned, we're going to destroy both artifacts again, like we did in Kizash, except this time now they look like pyramids. There's one on the east side, one on the west side, and we're just going to attack them. If the take's feeling confident, they can go and help on the artifacts as well by standing near the artifact. However, they're still going to want to keep moving to avoid those AoEs and make sure that they keep Sinya's attention. Once the first one's destroyed, move over to the second one. You'll notice that during this phase, there is a Sith Shadow Follower spawning. Just move him near the artifact and he'll die from AoE. It's whatever. When the second artifact is destroyed, the Jedi will move Sinya towards the front of the entry ramp and tank her there, and then everyone should be attacking Sinya now that the artifacts are destroyed. Phase 4 is Sinya Says. This is where she will call out what the effects of what 4 colors do. 1 being for survival, 2 being for your benefit, and the 4th one being death. Means that it kills you if you run into it. The light side Jedi and the medic want to immediately move to survive as fast as possible. DPS should pick up the other helpful colors if they're able to, which is why I'm running through green and red here, because in this case, they were the helpful colors. Green increased my damage output while red increased movement speed. And you want to end in the survival color. If the other helpful boosts are far away, don't worry about it, just go to the survival color. Once you're all stacked up, the medic will stasis Sinya once the group's there, and then everyone is going to AoE down the enemies as fast as possible. Phase 5 is the bigger ping pong. The light side Jedi will head to the south end of the arena. Everyone else will want to head to the base of the entry ramp. If you have extra Jedi or melee DPS, they can accompany the Jedi to the other side, but otherwise it's best to have everyone else start on the range damage side. At least 1 range DPS will be assigned to each of the Marauders, Delta, Beta, and Zeta at the beginning of the fight. The light side Jedi will wait until the medic's heal over time buffs have fallen off of the group members before starting the fight by attacking Alpha, who will then be followed by Gamma and Epsilon. Medics should refrain from opening the encounter with any large healing abilities or apply healing over time effects until the Jedi has the other 3 Marauders grouped up on them. The Jedi needs to maintain their attention on all 3 of those. Once the ranged Marauders are destroyed, everyone will run to the middle and group up to defeat the melee Marauders. When I say melee or ranged, I'm talking about their vulnerabilities. These 3 are only vulnerable to melee, the other 3 are vulnerable to range. And as you saw there, we grouped up the 3 range to, of course, AoE them down as fast as possible. For the melee Marauders, commandos again should stick to their primary element of choice to stack up dots and armor shredder. Once they are all dead, Sinya will become vulnerable and it just attacks Sinya. And for the last phase of Sinya, you just have to do one thing. Kill Sinya, but for real this time. And congratulations, you've completed your 8 loot box run, hopefully pretty quickly. An hour and 42 minutes here. It was very fast. These runs usually take closer to about 2.5 hours for a somewhat balanced and skilled group. Now again, these strategies might not be the same that you or your group end up using, but these are what we use and have good success. A very well coordinated group, especially one that skips the Sith Altar, can do this run in an hour and 30 minutes or less ideally. But again, you're usually going to have to allocate 2.5 hours to this. And if your group wants to do Milan, turn attack, or anything else afterwards, go for it. But you got your main treasures, those 8 loot boxes. Good luck out there, Legends, and stay hungry.